She had made it 14 steps. She was counting because she counted things, steps, seconds, the number of tiles between the elevator and the exit, the precise distance between where she was and where she needed to be. And she had made it 14 steps from the door of his office into the corridor of the 32nd floor when she heard him. Adaura. She stopped, not because she had decided to stop, because her name and his voice had a quality that her body recognized before her mind had finished processing the sound, the specific and particular quality of a man who had never, in 11 months, said her name at that register. He used her name the way he used everything, precisely as a tool, in the tone appropriate to the function. He said Adora when he was delegating. He said Adora when he was correcting. He said Adora when he needed something done. He had never said it like this. She turned around. He was standing in the doorway of his office, not in the threshold. He had come out of it, which was a thing he rarely did. The office was where people came to him, and he had arranged his world accordingly. He had come out of the office and into the corridor, and he was standing there with the specific quality of a man who had made a decision very quickly and was committed to it, and was not yet certain what the commitment was going to cost him. Adaura, he said again. The same register. Lower, if anything. I was wrong. The corridor was empty. It was 7:14 p.m. on a Thursday, and the 32nd floor had been clearing since 6, and there was no one left to hear this except her and the building, and whatever she was going to do with the next sentence. She looked at him. He looked at her. "Don't go," he said. 3 words. After 3 words that had cost him something she could see the cost of in the quality of his standing, not the controlled quality, not the managed quality, the third quality, the one she had seen exactly once before in 11 months, and which had told her, when she saw it, more about who he was than anything he had said in the months preceding it. She had 14 steps behind her, and a resignation letter in her bag that she had been composing in her head for the last 6 days, and a flight to Lagos booked for Sunday that she had not told him about, because she had not known, 6 days ago, that she was going to need to. She stood in the corridor. She thought about what he had said. She thought about what she was going to say back. World build the Shin Capital Tower in Yoido was not a building. It was a clock. A 40-floor mechanism of interconnected functions that ran on a schedule that Adora had spent 11 months learning the way you learn the schedule of any complex system. By observing its rhythms, its dependencies, its points of failure, and the specific ways in which the people inside it responded when something ran late. She had been the chief of staff. This was not what the position was called. The position was called Senior Executive Operations Manager, which was the corporate title for the role. And the corporate title was what appeared on her business cards and her email signature and the organizational chart that the Shin Capital Communications team updated quarterly. What the role actually was, in the 11 months she had been doing it, was chief of staff, the person who stood between Shin-Jae-Soo and the 37 people who reported to him directly, and between Shin-Jae-Soo and the decisions that required his specific attention, and between Shin-Jae-Soo and the structural failures that occurred in any organization of sufficient size on a regular basis and required resolution before they reached the level at which they required his attention. She had been very good at it. She was 32. She was from Enugu originally, the second of 3, the one her mother called the organizer, which was accurate and also insufficient as a description of what she did. She had spent 4 years in operations management in London, 2 years in strategy consulting in Singapore, and had come to Seoul 6 months before the Shin Capital engagement on a contract she had been recruited for by the headhunter who managed Shin-Jae-Soo's talent sourcing, who had told her on the phone that the role required someone who could manage complexity without requiring complexity to be managed for them. She had said, "That's a description of most good operations people." The headhunter had said, "It's a description of very few. That's why we've been looking for 8 months." She had taken the engagement. She had come to Seoul. She had spent the first 3 months understanding the organization's actual structure as opposed to its documented structure, which were, in any organization of sufficient complexity, different things, and had spent months 4 through 11 making the actual structure more closely resemble the documented one, which was the real work of the role. She had been, in the 11 months, the specific and irreplaceable kind of operational presence that organizations did not understand they needed until they had it, and then could not understand how they had functioned without it. Shin Jae-soo had understood this from month 3. He had not always behaved as if he understood it. This was the distinction that had produced the firing. He was 40. He had built Shin Capital from a family investment office into a diversified financial group across 12 years with a specific combination of intelligence and will that certain kinds of building required. Not the warm kind of intelligence, the structural kind. He saw systems. He saw dependencies. He saw the places where a structure had load-bearing elements that were not labeled as load-bearing and would fail if stressed, and he addressed those places before they failed, which was the primary reason Shin Capital had not had a significant structural failure in 12 years. He was also, in the specific and particular way of men who had built things alone and had become very good at building alone, difficult, not cruel. She had assessed this in month 1 and had been correct across 11 months. He was not cruel. He did not behave arbitrarily. He did not punish people for things that were not their fault. He was precise about what he expected, and he expected it at the level he had communicated, and he did not adjust the level because of circumstances. The circumstances were variables. The standard was the standard. This was the philosophy that had built Shin Capital. It was also the philosophy that had produced, on the previous Thursday at 6:48 p.m., the conversation that had ended with the word fired and 14 steps down the corridor. The time bomb had been ticking since month 8. It had detonated over a presentation. CTA bridge my clear-eyed hearts and honest people, 60 seconds before we go any further. If this story found you tonight and you know what it costs to be called back, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a like. Drop your city in the comments right now. Enugu, Seoul, London, Lagos, Singapore, Atlanta, wherever you are, leave it. Every comment tells the algorithm this story deserves to find the person who needs it. He called her back. He said I was wrong. He said don't go. She's still standing in the corridor. So are we. Let's find out what she decides. The heroine's wound, the presentation, had been about the Busan expansion. She had built it over 6 weeks. The market analysis, the operational timeline, the resource requirements, the risk assessment. She had built it with the thoroughness she brought to everything, which was complete. And she had built it with something additional that she did not always bring to operational work, which was her actual opinion. This was the variable that had produced the firing. She had an actual opinion about the Busan expansion. Her opinion was that the timeline was wrong, not the direction, the timeline. The organization was at a point in its operational scaling where adding a regional office of the proposed size in the proposed time frame would stress 4 load-bearing elements of the current structure in ways that the current structure could not absorb without structural changes. That were not in the expansion plan. She had documented this. She had built the documentation into the presentation. She had presented the presentation. Shin Jae-soo had heard the presentation. He had said, "The timeline stands." She had said, "The timeline produces a structural risk that isn't in the plan." He had said, "The timeline stands." She had said, With respect, the risk is in the documentation. It's not an opinion. It's a projection from the current operational data. If we proceed on the current timeline, the load on the sole compliance function in months 4 through 6 of the expansion will exceed capacity by approximately 30%. I've modeled 3 alternative timelines that achieve the same 12-month objective with a different distribution of load. He had said, "I've seen the alternatives. The timeline stands," she had said, with the precise and careful directness that she had been exercising across 11 months in the specific form that the role and the man required. "I want to be clear that I've documented the risk assessment and the 3 alternatives in the operational record. I'm recommending against the current timeline on the basis of operational data." He had looked at her. He had said, "You're recommending against a decision I've made." She had said, "I'm recommending you consider the alternatives before the decision is final." He had said, "The decision is final." She had said, "Then I've documented my assessment in the operational record, and I'll proceed with implementation." He had said, "You've documented your disagreement." She had said, "I've documented the operational assessment, which is my function." He had said, with the specific and precise quality of a man who had built 12 years of being the person whose decisions were final and who had encountered, in the 11 months preceding this conversation, the specific experience of having someone in his organization who was consistently and accurately correct about operational matters in ways he had initially not welcomed and had come to rely on, and who had in the relying not noticed the relying. If you disagree with the decision, you're not the right person for the role. The room had been quiet. She had said, "Is that a conditional statement or a termination?" He had said, "It's a termination." She had looked at him for a moment. She had gathered her materials. She had said, "I'll have the transition documentation to your office by Friday morning." She had walked out. She had made it 14 steps. Her wound was not the firing. Her wound was what had made the firing possible, what had made her say the things she said and keep saying it past the point at which she could see the trajectory and what it was going to end with. She was a person who knew when to stop saying things. She had operational experience in rooms where the saying had costs, and she had learned to calibrate the costs. She had not calibrated on Thursday. She had not calibrated because she had been, across 11 months, in the specific process of becoming someone who operated in this organization as if her assessments mattered. And they had mattered. And he had relied on them. And the relying had produced in her a false security about what happened when the assessment conflicted directly with a made decision. She had been wrong about the security. She had been right about the assessment. These were 2 different things, and she had conflated them. The wound was the specific cost of trusting a context, and having the context turn out to be conditional in a way she had not seen clearly. She had been, in the 6 days since the firing, sitting with this, not with bitterness. She was not a bitter person. She was a precise person. And precision required distinguishing between what she had done wrong and what the situation had done wrong, and what the other person had done wrong, and what the combination had produced. She had been sitting with all 3. She was still sitting with them in the corridor when he said her name. The hero's wound she had not, until the Friday morning after the firing, understood the specific texture of his wound. She had understood the outline of it. You could not be someone's chief of staff for 11 months without understanding the shape of the person, the places where the surface and the depth diverged, the specific points of pressure that produced responses disproportionate to the stimulus, the history that was legible in the structure of the thing they had built and the way they moved through it. She had understood that he had built Shin Capital alone. That alone meant something specific in his case, not just without partners, but without the particular kind of partnership that required sharing the building while you were doing it. He had shared results. He had shared decisions, selectively, with the people whose input he had determined was worth incorporating. He had not shared the process. She had been, in the 11 months, the closest thing to a partner in the process he had allowed. She had not understood, until Friday, what that had cost him to allow. She understood it on Friday, because of Park Min-ji. Park Min-ji was the senior compliance director, 15 years with the organization. The person who had been in the compliance function since before Shin Capital was Shin Capital, who had watched it become what it was, and had been part of every structural decision in the years she had been there. She had come to Adora's office on Friday morning at 9, which was before the transition documentation was due, with the quality of someone who had something to say and had decided to say it. She had said, "I've been in this organization for 15 years. I've watched 3 people in your role in the last 5 years. None of them lasted 8 months. Adora had said, "I know." Park Min-ji had said, "Do you know why?" Adora had said, "The role has structural ambiguity that makes it difficult to maintain without strong organizational support." Park Min-ji had looked at her. She had said, "That's the diplomatic version." Adora had said, "What's the other version?" Park Min-ji had said, "He fires people when they get close to the actual work, not the operational work, the other work. The work of understanding how he makes decisions and why. The work of seeing the structure as he sees it." She had paused. "You got closer than anyone in 15 years. He's been relying on you in ways he doesn't rely on anyone." She had looked at her hands. That's why the Busan presentation produced what it produced. Adora had looked at her. "You're saying," she had said slowly, "that he fired me because I was right." "I'm saying," Park Min-ji had said, "that he fired you because you were right. And you knew you were right. And you documented it in the operational record in the way of someone who has been doing this long enough to build the record correctly. And that level of competence, the operational competence combined with the willingness to document the disagreement formally, was the specific thing that made the arrangement feel like something he couldn't manage." She had been quiet. "He doesn't fire incompetent people immediately," Park Min-ji had said. "He fires competent people when their competence becomes visible, in the specific way that makes the relying visible." Adora had sat with this for a long time. "The wound," she had said finally, not to Park Min-ji, to herself, but out loud. Park Min-ji had said, "His wife left in the 3rd year. Before I came. The story I've heard, and I've been here 15 years, so I've heard stories, is that she said the organization didn't leave room for anyone else to matter, that he made her feel useful, and then correct, and then not necessary, in that order." Adora had looked at the transition documentation on her desk. "He does the same thing to people," she had said, "in the professional context." "He doesn't mean to," Park Min-ji had said. "That's the thing. He doesn't understand that he's doing it. He relies on people until the relying is uncomfortable, and then he finds a reason to stop." "The presentation," Adora had said. "The presentation was the reason this time," Park Min-ji had said. She had sat with this for the rest of Friday. She had been sitting with it for 6 days. She was still sitting with it in the corridor, 14 steps from his door, when he said I was wrong and don't go in the same breath. Forced proximity wrung one. She turned around. She looked at him in the corridor. He was in the doorway, out of the office, which was the thing that told her the most. He had come out of the office. "You have 90 seconds, she said, "before I continue walking." He looked at her. She watched him decide, in the space of those words, What to do with 90 seconds that he had clearly not prepared for, in the specific way he prepared for things. He was a person who prepared. He had sent the message 40 minutes ago. Come back to the office. There's something I need to say, and she had debated for 35 of those minutes whether to go. And had gone because she was a person who finished things, and leaving without hearing the something would be not finishing, which was not her way. She had gone. She had heard, I was wrong. Don't go. She was now giving him 90 seconds. The presentation, he said. Yes, she said. Your assessment was correct, he said. I reviewed the operational data on Monday. Your projection about the compliance function load in months 4 through 6 was accurate. The alternative timeline you modeled is the one we should use. She looked at him. You reviewed the data, she said. On Monday, he said. The day after Sunday, she said. Which was the day after Saturday. Which was 2 days after you fired me on Thursday. He was quiet. Yes, he said. And then, she said. You waited until today. He stopped. I was determining what to say. It took 4 days, she said. Yes, he said. She looked at the corridor. At the 14 steps behind her, at the elevator at the end of it, which was where she had been going and was now not going, at least for the next however many seconds were left of the 90. The assessment, she said. The Busan timeline. You knew it was right before you fired me. He was quiet. Yes, he said. She held this. You fired me, she said, because I was right. He was quiet for a moment. I fired you, he said, because the way you were right was... He stopped. Started again with the care of a man who was saying something he had not said before and was finding the words as he went. The way you were right was the way that made it apparent that I had been relying on you in ways I hadn't acknowledged, that the documentation you built was the documentation of a person who understood the organization the way I understand it. He looked at her. That was uncomfortable. She looked at him. Uncomfortable, she said. Threatening, he said. The word cost him something. She could see the cost. It felt threatening that someone understood the structure as well as I did, that someone was documenting the places where my decision was wrong with the precision of someone who had been paying the kind of attention that I thought only I was paying. She held the bag on her shoulder. So you fired me, she said. Yes, he said. To stop feeling threatened, she said. Yes, he said. That, she said, is the least defensible thing I've heard in 11 months of working for you. He looked at her. Yes, he said. I know. She looked at the corridor. The elevator was at the end of it. The flight was on Sunday. The resignation letter was in her bag. 70 seconds, she said. You have 70 seconds left. Use them. Rung 2, he used them. Not in the way she had expected. She had expected the professional argument, the operational case for her return, the specific and structured presentation of reasons why the organization needed her. He had not prepared the professional argument because he had not, she understood, known that he was going to be in this corridor until he was in it. Park Min-ji, he said. She looked at him. She came to my office today, he said. Before I sent you the message. He held her gaze. She told me. She told me the version she told you on Friday. About the pattern. About the 3 people before you. She was quiet. She told you, she said. She's been in this organization for 15 years, he said. She's been watching me do this for 15 years and she's never said anything. Because, he paused. Because none of them lasted long enough for it to matter that she said it. None of them got close enough for the saying to be necessary. He looked at his hands. She said you were different. She said what I did to you was... He stopped. What did she say? Adora said. He looked up. She said it was the same thing I did to Hei-wan, he said. My wife. When we were married. He said it with the flatness of something that had been examined and found accurate. She said I make people feel essential, and then I find a reason to remove them before the essential becomes something I can't manage. Adora looked at him. And you think she's right? She said. I think, he said carefully, that I fired you because you were precisely as good at what you do as I am at what I do, and that this was the first time in 12 years that there has been someone in this organization whose competence in their domain matched mine in mine, and that instead of, he stopped. Instead of being able to hold that, I made it into a reason. A reason to fire me, she said. A reason to stop the arrangement, he said. Before it became something I didn't know how to manage. She looked at the corridor. The arrangement, she said. Chief of Staff. The professional arrangement, he said. And, he paused. The other arrangement. She looked at him. There is no other arrangement, she said. No. He said. There isn't. But there was. He stopped. Started again. There was a direction. In the 11 months. That I was aware of, and that I didn't address because addressing it would have required acknowledging it, and acknowledging it would have required. He stopped. Being in it, she said. Yes, he said. She looked at the elevator. I am going to walk to the elevator, she said. I am going to go home, and tomorrow, if you still want to have this conversation, I will have it. Not in a corridor at 7:15 on a Thursday. In an office. At a table. With enough time to say the things that need to be said correctly. He looked at her. Tomorrow, he said. 10 o'clock, she said. Your office. Or mine. I still have mine until the end of the month. Your office, he said. 10 o'clock. She turned. She walked to the elevator. She pressed the button. She did not look back. He did not call her name again. The elevator came. She went home. Rung 3. The competence reveal she came at 10 o'clock. Her office. The one she still had until the end of the month. She had, in the 6 days, not dismantled it. She had been composing the transition documentation with the thoroughness she brought to everything, which meant it was comprehensive, which meant it had required the full 6 days. The office still looked like her office. The operational calendar on the screen, the 3 monitors, the filing system that had taken her 6 months to build, and that she had documented for her successor in the transition file with the specific and generous detail of someone who understood that organizational knowledge was organizational capital and should not leave with the person who built it. He came to her office. He sat in the chair across from her desk, the visitor chair, the non-significant one, and she sat behind the desk, which was her desk until the end of the month, which was where she chose to be. She had spent the evening thinking about what she was going to say. She said, I want to talk about the Busan presentation. Not as a grievance, as an analysis. He said, all right. She said, the assessment was correct. You've confirmed that. The alternative timeline I built is the one you're going to use. That part of the conversation is finished. She held his gaze. The part that isn't finished is why you said if you disagree with the decision, you're not the right person for the role. That sentence. I want to understand what produced it. He was quiet. I told you last night, he said. You told me the what, she said. The threatening, the arrangement, the pattern. I want to understand the mechanism, specifically because I have been your chief of staff for 11 months, and I have been building a detailed operational understanding of how this organization works, and how you make decisions, and what you need from the people around you to make the decisions well. She held his gaze. And the mechanism that produced that sentence is a mechanism I didn't see in 11 months, which means it's a blind spot in my operational understanding of you. He looked at her. You're analyzing the firing, he said. I'm analyzing the decision-making pattern, she said. That produced the firing, which is my function. She paused. I don't stop doing my function because I've been fired. I stop doing my function when I'm no longer here. He was quiet for a long moment. The mechanism, he said, I've never had to articulate it before. I know, she said. That's why I'm asking you to now. Because if we're going to have the conversation you want to have, the other one, not the Busan one, then I need to understand the mechanism, so I know what I'm working with. He looked at her. You're asking me to explain my own pattern, he said. Yes, she said. To me. In this office, so I can decide whether the pattern is something I can work with, or something that will produce Thursday again in 4 months. He was quiet. Then he said, My father built this organization. Not from nothing, from a family investment office, which is close enough to nothing that the distinction is technical. He built it in 15 years, and then he handed it to me, and 3 years after that he died. He looked at the window. The 3 years of the handover were the 3 years of my marriage. I was building the organization and learning to be my father and trying to be a husband at the same time. He paused. She said the organization didn't leave room for anyone else to matter. That I made her feel essential, and then I made the organization more essential, and she became, he stopped. She became someone I managed, rather than someone I was with. And then she left, Adora said. And then she left, he said. And I concluded, correctly I think, as a description of what I was doing, that I was not capable of the two things simultaneously, building the organization and being with someone. I couldn't hold both. He looked at her. So I stopped trying to hold both. For 12 years, she said. For 12 years, he said. And in those 12 years, she said, you fired 3 people from my role. Not because they were incompetent. Because they were getting. He paused. Because the professional relationship was becoming something that felt like the two things simultaneously. And I removed it, before it became something I couldn't manage. She looked at him. The mechanism, she said, is that you fire people when the professional relationship starts to feel like the personal one. Yes, he said. Because the personal one is the one you don't know how to hold, she said. Yes, he said. She looked at her desk, at the transition documentation, at the operational calendar, at 11 months of work that was, from a professional standpoint, the best work she had done in her career. Complete, accurate, built with the specific rigor of someone who had found the role that used everything she had. I want to tell you something, she said, about my assessment of the situation. He waited. The work I've done here, she said, in 11 months, is the best operational work I've done in my career. Not because the organization is the most complex I've worked in. It isn't. Singapore was more complex structurally. But because you are the most demanding principal I've worked for. Your standard is the highest I've encountered. Your structural intelligence is the best I've worked alongside. She held his gaze. I've been doing better work here because I was working for you. Because the standard required it. He was quiet. That's the professional part, she said. Here's the other part. She held his gaze, the direction you mentioned last night. In 11 months. I was aware of it too. I didn't address it because I was aware of the mechanism, not as precisely as I am now, but I knew there was a pattern, and I knew the pattern had something to do with proximity, and I didn't push the boundary because I was trying to protect the professional arrangement. She paused, which was, as it turns out, not a protection that held. He looked at her. So, we both knew, he said. We both knew, she said. And we both made decisions based on what we knew. Mine was to not push the boundary. Yours was to fire me when the boundary felt close. Yes, he said. Neither of those was the right decision, she said. No, he said. She looked at the desk. The Busan alternative timeline, she said. I'm going to give you the implementation guide before I go. It's in the transition documentation. But I want to walk you through it directly because there are 3 dependencies in months 4 through 7 that need a specific kind of monitoring, and I want to make sure whoever does this role after me understands them. He looked at her. I want you to do this role after you, he said. She looked at him. I know, she said. That's the conversation we're having. Is it? He said. Yes, she said. I've been having it since you said I was wrong in the corridor. I've been deciding whether the mechanism is something I can work with, whether you can hold the 2 things simultaneously, or whether Thursday will happen again in 4 months when the arrangement gets close enough that you need to remove it. He held her gaze. I don't know, he said. If I can hold both. I've never tried for longer than 3 years, and the 3 years ended the way they ended. That's the most honest thing you've said in 11 months, she said. Yes, he said. I know you know that, she said. The question is whether the knowing is enough. He was quiet. I want to try, he said. That's what I can tell you. I don't know if the trying will work. I know I want to try. She looked at him. With the operational arrangement, she said. What changes? The Busan assessment, he said, is in the record. And it's correct. And the next time your assessment conflicts with my decision, I want you to tell me. The same way, with the documentation. He paused, and I'm not going to fire you for it. How do I know that? She said. You don't, he said. You'll have to see. She looked at the transition documentation. Walk me through the decision, she said. The Busan one. The original timeline. What was the operational thinking? He looked at her. Now, he said. Now, she said. I want to understand the decision I contradicted, not to relitigate it, to understand the decision-making. He was quiet for a moment. Then he walked her through it. The operational thinking, the market timing, the competitive pressure, the specific window he had been watching for 18 months that had informed the timeline. She listened the way she listened, completely, building the picture, finding the places where the thinking was correct, and the places where it had been missing variables she had been able to see from her position in the operational structure. She asked 4 questions. He answered them. When they were done, she said, the competitive pressure is real. The window is real. The alternative timeline I built accounts for both. The compliance load issue in months 4 through 6 is the variable you weren't seeing because you don't sit in the compliance function, and I do. She held his gaze. That's why you need a chief of staff whose structural understanding is equivalent to yours. Not to override your decisions, to see the variables you don't see from where you sit. He looked at her. Yes, he said. I know. You knew before Thursday, she said. Yes, he said. I knew before Thursday. And you fired me anyway, she said. Yes, he said. Because the knowing was uncomfortable. She looked at him. I'm going to tell you something, she said, about what I need if I come back. Tell me, he said. I need the assessment to be part of the role, she said, formally, not just the operational execution, the assessment. Including when the assessment disagrees with the decision. And I need that to be in writing. In the role documentation. So that the next time Thursday comes, because it will come, in some form, there is a formal record that the assessment is the function, and the function is protected. He looked at her. You want it in the contract, he said. I want it in the role documentation, she said. The contract is a legal instrument. The role documentation is the operational understanding of what the role is. I want them to match. That would require rewriting the role documentation, he said. Yes, she said. I know. I'll write it. He looked at her. Something moved through his face. The third quality. The one she had seen once before in 11 months. Not the controlled quality. The one underneath. You'll write the documentation for the role, he said, that protects you from being fired again. I'll write the documentation for the role, she said, that makes the role what it should have been from the beginning. She held his gaze, which is a role in which someone with equivalent structural understanding to yours has the function of assessment as well as execution. And the assessment is protected. He was quiet for a long moment. All right, he said. And the other conversation, she said. The one that's not the Busan one. Yes, he said. That one is slower, she said. We don't have it today. I know, he said. We have it when we have it, she said. After the role is re-established. After the documentation is written. After I've seen what Thursday looks like when it comes again, and what you do when it does. You're going to wait and see, he said. I'm going to work and see, she said. I don't wait. I work. He looked at her. I know, he said. That's why I called you back. The external threat, came from an unexpected direction, which was the direction threats usually came from when you had spent enough time expecting the expected ones. It came 3 weeks after she came back, in the form of a conversation she had with her counterpart at the Busan office search, the person she had been coordinating with on the alternative timeline implementation, a man named Director Yoon, who had been with the organization for 8 years, and who had, in the 3 weeks since her return, been conducting himself with a specific and practiced cordiality that she had been reading and not yet concluded. The conversation happened on a Tuesday. Director Yoon said, with the specific and careful phrasing of someone who had rehearsed the sentence, I want to make sure I understand the new operational structure. The Chief of Staff's role in the revised documentation includes formal assessment authority over strategic decisions. Adaura said, the role includes formal assessment function, which is documented and protected. Director Yoon said, assessment function as distinct from execution. Adaura said, assessment and execution are both in the role, correctly documented. Director Yoon said, some of the senior leadership have found the new documentation. He paused. Unusual, Adaura said. In what way? Director Yoon said, the protection of the assessment function. In the previous versions of the role, the operational authority was clear. The assessment, the documented disagreement with strategic decisions, was less formalized. Adaura said, yes. That's what the new documentation corrects. Director Yoon looked at her. The chairman's decisions, he said, have always been the chairman's decisions. They still are, she said. The assessment function doesn't change who makes the decision. It documents the operational perspective, which the chairman can consider or not consider. The decision remains his. She held Director Yoon's gaze. What changes is that the assessment is formally protected, which is what the role requires and what the documentation now reflects. Director Yoon was quiet. Some members of the senior leadership, he said, would prefer the previous arrangement. Some members of the senior leadership, she said, were comfortable with an operational structure that had a blind spot in the compliance function that cost the Busan timeline 3 months. She held his gaze. The new documentation addresses the blind spot. She went to Shinjae-su that afternoon. Director Yoon, she said. He looked up from the document he was reading. Yes, I know. She looked at him. You know, she said. He came to me this morning, he said. Before he came to you. He set the document down. He said the senior leadership has concerns about the new role documentation. And you said, she said. I said the documentation reflects the operational structure I want, he said, and that the assessment function is protected because I determined it should be protected. He held her gaze. And that anyone with concerns about the documentation should address them to me directly. She looked at him. You handled it before I got here, she said. Director Yoon came to me first, he said. I handled it when he came to me. He held her gaze. I told you I wouldn't fire you for the assessment. I meant the broader version of that. She looked at him. The broader version, she said. The protection applies, he said. Not just in the room between us. In the organization. He held her gaze. That's what the documentation is. That's what I'm telling the senior leadership it is. She was quiet for a moment. You're protecting the documentation, she said. I'm protecting the function, he said. Which is what the documentation establishes. She looked at him. Thank you, she said. You wrote it correctly, he said. I'm telling people it's correct. She thought about this. That's a different response, she said, than firing me. Yes, he said. It is. It's the better one, she said. I know, he said. I'm working on knowing it consistently, not just in this instance. She looked at him across his desk. You're working on it, she said. Yes, he said. Out loud, she said. To me, yes, he said. That's the right direction, she said. The declaration, it was a Sunday. She was in the office. Not her office. The building's common space on the 31st floor, which had a seating area and a view of the hall that was, on a clear Sunday in March, the kind of view that made the 31 floors worth of building worth the building. She had come in to finish the month 4 monitoring framework, which was the thing she had promised herself she would finish before Monday, and which was 2 hours from finished. He found her there. Not by accident. She had told him on Friday she would be in on Sunday. She had told him because she had established, in the 3 weeks since returning, the practice of telling him her operational schedule, including the weekend schedule, because the operational schedule was information he needed, and she was the person who had it, and the having of it was part of the function. He sat down across from her. She kept working. He said, I want to tell you something. She looked up. He was in the Sunday version of himself, not the formal configuration, the relaxed by 1 degree version, the jacket-off configuration that she had catalogued in 11 months of working alongside him. He was looking at her with the quality she had learned to read as the third quality, the one underneath the controlled and the managed. Tell me, she said. The Busan timeline, he said, the alternative one you built. We're 6 weeks in. The compliance function load in months 4 through 7 is tracking exactly to your projection. He held her gaze. The alternative timeline is going to deliver the regional office on the same 12-month objective with none of the structural risk the original timeline would have produced. I know, she said. I've been monitoring it. I know you've been monitoring it, he said. I wanted to say it out loud. She looked at him. You're acknowledging that the assessment was right, she said. Yes, he said. You already did that, she said. In the corridor. I was wrong. I'm doing it again, he said. With the data behind it. He held her gaze. I want you to know that when I said it in the corridor. I had reviewed the data, and I knew the data. And now 6 weeks into the implementation, the data is confirming it. And I want you to know that I know. She looked at him. Why is it important to you that I know you know? She said. He was quiet for a moment. Because for 12 years, he said, I have operated in an environment where I was the person who knew, where the knowing was mine, and I used it and I didn't. He stopped. I didn't share what I knew with anyone. Not the knowing itself. The conclusions, yes, the knowing, the process of understanding something, I kept that. He looked at his hands. You understand the Busan situation as well as I do. You understood it before I did, in the specific way that comes from sitting in the operational structure and watching it. And I want you to know that I know that. She looked at him. That's a very precise thing to say, she said. I've been trying to be precise, he said, about the things that require it. She set down the tablet she had been working on. Jae-soo, she said, his name, the first name, which she had not used in 11 months of working for him, which was the formal distance the role had required, which she had maintained because the role had required it, and now the role had been rewritten, and the formal distance was, possibly, no longer the only option. He went still. Not the controlled stillness. The other kind. Yes, he said. The work, she said, the thing I told you. That working for you has been the best operational work of my career because your standard is the highest I've encountered. She held his gaze. That's still true. And the other part, he said. The other part, she said, is that I've been watching you for 3 weeks since I came back. Watching you handle Director Yoon and handle the senior leadership concerns and handle the Busan implementation. And you've been, she paused. Different how, he said. More available to the knowing, she said. Sharing it. Telling me what you know and how you know it. Letting me into the process. She looked at him. That's what you didn't do before Thursday. You shared decisions and conclusions, but you kept the process. Yes, he said. You're sharing the process now, she said. I'm trying, he said. He stopped. It's unfamiliar. I know, she said. It's also, he paused. Better than I expected. Than the 12 years suggested it would be. She looked at him. The two things simultaneously, she said. The organization and the yes, he said. I thought I couldn't hold both. I thought the holding of both was what cost, he stopped. Hey, one, she said. Yes, he said. But I think, he paused. I think what cost Hey one wasn't the holding of both. It was the not holding. The managing instead of being with. He looked at her. I managed her, instead of being in it with her. The organization was something I was in. She was something I managed. He held her gaze. I want to be in it with you. Both things. The work and the other thing. She looked at him. You said you wanted to try, she said. In my office. 3 weeks ago. I'm still trying, he said. I want you to know I'm still trying. I can see that you are, she said. And, he said, the direction I mentioned in the corridor. The other arrangement. I want to. He stopped. Found the sentence. I want to say it clearly. Not in a corridor at 7:15. Now, at a table. With enough time to say it correctly. She waited. I have been, he said, aware of the direction since month 6. I have been managing the awareness the way I managed everything for 12 years, by keeping it and not sharing it and finding reasons to address it by removing the source. He held her gaze. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to say it instead. He paused. I want to be in this with you. The work, which is already what it is. And the other thing, which is what I'm asking about. He held her gaze. I'm asking about it. Directly, which is the thing I should have done in month 6, instead of waiting until the corridor. She looked at him. at the man across from her at the table, the Sunday version, the third quality. "You're asking," she said. "Yes," he said. "After firing me," she said. "Yes," he said. "I know." "And calling me back," she said. "Yes," he said. "And saying I was wrong," she said. "Yes," he said. She looked at the hall through the 31st floor window, the March light on it, the river doing its river thing. "I told you," she said, "that the other conversation was slower. That we'd have it when we had it. After I'd seen what Thursday looked like when it came again." "Yes," he said. "Director Yoon was a Thursday," she said, "in the organizational sense." "Yes," he said. "And you handled it before I got to you," she said. "Yes," he said. "That's..." She paused. "That's not nothing." "No," he said. "It's not." She looked at him. "The documentation," she said, "is protected." "Yes," he said. "The assessment function," she said, "is protected." "Yes," he said. "And you're sharing the process," she said. "The knowing." "I'm trying," he said. Consistently, she held his gaze. "Then we can have the other conversation," she said, "since you're asking directly." She held his gaze. "But I need you to understand something first." "Tell me," he said. "If Thursday comes again," she said. "In the other arrangement, if the proximity becomes uncomfortable and you find a reason, I will not be called back a second time." He was quiet. "I know," he said. "You say that now," she said. "But the mechanism, I know the mechanism," he said. "I know it now in a way I didn't know it before. I know it by name. I know what it produces." He held her gaze. "I'm not telling you it won't come. I'm telling you I know it now, and that knowing is..." He paused. "The knowing changes what I can do with it. I can see it arriving before Thursday." "And when you see it arriving," she said. "I come to the table," he said. "The way I'm at this table now." He held her gaze. Instead of finding a reason, she looked at him. "That's the thing I needed to hear," she said. "Yes," he said. She looked at the river. "Yes," she said. He looked at her. "Yes," he said. "Don't look so surprised," she said. He stopped. Something moved in his face that she had not seen before. Not the third quality, a fourth one. Newer, less practiced. "I'm not surprised," he said. He found the word. Relieved, she looked at him. "You've been terrified," she said. "Yes," he said. "Since the corridor." "Of what I'd say," she said. "Of what I'd said," he said. "That I couldn't take back, that I couldn't fix." He held her gaze. "I said don't go, and I didn't know if you were going to keep walking." "I almost did," she said. "I know," he said. "What stopped me," she said, "was the I was wrong, not the don't go." He looked at her. "The admission," he said. "Yes," she said. "A man who says I was wrong is a different man than the one who fires people when they're right." She held his gaze. "I wanted to know which one you were going to be." "And," he said. "I'm still finding out," she said. "But the evidence so far is..." She paused. "Directionally correct." He looked at her across the table in the Sunday March light, with the Han through the window. "Directionally correct," he said. "It's a good operational assessment," she said. "Yes," he said. "It is." The choice she called her mother that evening. Not to announce anything, she was not at the announcement stage, she was at the directionally correct stage, and her mother was a woman who understood the difference between stages and did not require them to be collapsed. She told her mother the whole of it. Not a version. The whole thing. The 11 months, the Busan presentation, the firing, the corridor at 7:15, the I was wrong, the 14 steps, the office at 10 o'clock, the role documentation, Director Yoon, the Sunday table, the yes. Her mother listened with the quality she always listened with, completely, without filling the space, letting it arrive at its own pace. When she was done, her mother said, "He said I was wrong." "Yes," Adora said. Out loud, her mother said. In the corridor. "Yes," Adora said. "After firing you," her mother said. "After firing me," Adora said. "And calling you back," her mother said. "And calling me back," Adora said. Her mother was quiet for a moment. "Your grandfather," she said, "had a saying. He said, 'A man who cannot say he was wrong is a man who will never be right.' He said he learned it the hard way." She paused. "He said the learning had taken him 15 years and cost him your grandmother's patience, which was not a small thing." Adora said, "He said I was wrong in a corridor. He hasn't had to say it to himself for 12 years. That's a different thing." "Yes," her mother said. "It is." She paused. "Did he say it like he meant it?" Adora thought about the corridor, the specific quality of his standing, the cost of the standing. "Yes," she said. "He meant it. And the documentation," her mother said. "It's in writing. I wrote it," Adora said. "It's protected." "You wrote your own protection," her mother said. "I wrote the role correctly," Adora said. "The protection is the correct role." Her mother was quiet. "Your father," she said, "could not say he was wrong for the first 7 years of our marriage. He said it in the 8th year about something I had been telling him since the 2nd. She paused. "I asked him what changed. He said he had run out of reasons not to." She paused again. "I've always thought that was the most honest thing I ever heard a man say. He'd run out of reasons not to," Adora said. "Yes," her mother said. "Sometimes that's what the I was wrong means, that the reasons were no longer worth the cost." Adora held the phone. "I told him," she said, "that the I was wrong was what stopped me, not the don't go." Her mother said, "Yes." "Because the don't go is about him," Adora said, "and the I was wrong is about me." "Yes," her mother said. She looked at the apartment, the Enugu photograph on the desk, the Lego skyline on the phone's screensaver. "He's working on the holding," she said. "The two things simultaneously. He's working on it out loud. To me." "Yes," her mother said. "That's the important part. The work," her mother said. "The work," Adora said. "Not the saying," her mother said. "The work." "The work," Adora said. Her mother breathed. "Come home in the summer," her mother said. "Bring him." Adora looked at the window. "He'll come for the middle week," she said. "Probably." Her mother laughed. "The real one, the full one, the one that traveled through the phone across the distance and arrived intact." "Good enough," her mother said. Resolution: the Busan Regional Office opened on schedule. The alternative timeline delivered the 12-month objective, with the compliance function load tracking exactly to Adora's projection, not exceeding capacity in months 4 through 7, distributing correctly, functioning the way the assessment had said it would function. Shin Jae-soo reviewed the month 7 data with her on a Thursday. Not the same Thursday as the firing, a different Thursday, 6 months later, on a day that had the quality of a normal day rather than a day that would divide the year into before and after. He reviewed the data and he said, "Your projection was accurate to within 3%. She said, "The monitoring framework was calibrated correctly. The credit goes to the framework." He said, "The framework was built by someone who understood the operational structure better than anyone in the organization." She said, "I know." He said, "I know you know. I'm saying it." She looked at him. "You're saying it," she said. "Yes," he said. "I've been trying to say the things I know, out loud, to you." He held her gaze. "The work is in the saying." "Yes," she said. "It is." He looked at the month 7 data. "Your mother," he said. "The summer." "July," she said. 3 weeks. "Middle week," he said. She looked at him. "She has questions," she said. "I know," he said. "You've told me." "And you're still coming," she said. "Yes," he said. A man who says I was wrong in a corridor, he said, can handle a mother's questions in Enugu. She looked at him. Something was in his face that was newer than the third quality and newer than the fourth one she had seen on the Sunday in March. A fifth one, the one that arrived when a person had been working on something long enough that the working had become, not natural exactly, but possible, not comfortable, but held. She's going to like you, Adara said. You don't know that, he said. I know her, she said, and I know you, and she's going to like you. He looked at the data. The month 7 operational review, he said, is complete. Yes, she said. Is there anything else on the operational calendar today? He said. She looked at the calendar. No, she said. The day is done. He was quiet for a moment. Then let's go home, he said. She looked at him. Let's. The plural. The shared destination. Yes, she said. Let's. Emotional close, he had called her back after 14 steps. Not after 14 days of thinking about it. Not after a strategic calculation about operational necessity. Not after the senior leadership had flagged the gap in the function. After 14 steps. The distance from his door to the point at which her walking away became irreversible. He had said I was wrong first, not don't go first. I was wrong first. And then, don't go. In that order, the admission before the ask, the cost before the request. She had stopped because of the admission, not because he was powerful. Not because she needed the role or the organization or the specific and demanding standard that had produced the best operational work of her career. She had stopped because I was wrong from that specific man. In that specific corridor, at the cost she could see it had cost him, was the first honest thing he had said to her that was not about the work. He had been honest about the work from the beginning. The work was where his honesty lived. The decisions, the assessments, the projections, the data. All of it honest. All of it precise. All of it the product of a structural intelligence that saw things correctly and said what it saw. The things that were not the work. The 12 years, the pattern, the mechanism, the holding that he couldn't do and the 3 people before her. And the wife who had said, I thought I could do this and I can't. Those had not been spoken. They had been present in the structure of the organization and the structure of his decisions, but not spoken. He had spoken them. In a corridor at 7:15, after 14 steps, she had turned around. Not because turning around was safe. Not because she knew what he was going to be able to hold and for how long. But because I was wrong is not a thing that people say when they have given up. It is the thing people say when they have decided that the cost of not saying it is higher than the cost of saying it. When they have run out of reasons not to. He had run out of reasons not to. She had turned around. And then they had gone to work. Not as a romantic act, as a professional one. She had written the documentation. She had protected the function. She had watched Director Yoon and watched how the Busan implementation tracked and watched him share the knowing, process by process, Thursday by Thursday. She had been watching for 6 months. The evidence was directionally correct. That was enough to keep working with. That was, as it turned out, what she had needed all along. Not the perfect holding, not the guarantee that the mechanism would never arrive again, not the certainty that the 2 things simultaneously were possible without cost, just the work. Together, with the I was wrong available for the Thursdays that came. That was the role she had written. That was the arrangement they had made. That was the let's in the let's go. Home. And CTA, my clear-eyed hearts and honest people, if this story held you all the way through, you already know what we build here. Drop your city in the comments right now. Enugu, Seoul, London, Lagos, Singapore, Atlanta, wherever you are tonight, leave it. Leave a like so the algorithm knows this one deserves to travel. Subscribe and ring that bell, because what comes next features a woman who has been in the background of every meeting for 3 years, and the night someone finally asked what she thought. I'll see you there. Say I was wrong. Then do the work.